Welcome to the CEO.com show. My name is Clint. It's so good to be here. It's good to be alive. You're alive. Take that. Take that. That's a win. You being alive right now is a win. Make sure you download the CEO.com app on Android, Roku, Amazon Fire, iOS, Android, all the different ways you can do it. Apple TV, there's many different ways you can do it. That's another win. You're alive. You got the CEO.com app. You're winning. On today's show, I talked to Bret Rasmussen, the founder and CEO of KURU, an amazing footwear company. You got to check them out. Here's my conversation with Bret. Bret, thank you so much for coming on. I want to talk about your journey. I want to talk about why footwear, but first give us a little background on you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to share more about KURU and what we're doing and why we matter in the Utah ecosystem and the greater ecosystem of eliminating foot pain. So I'm Bret Rasmussen. I'm the founder, CEO of KURU. Launched KURU. Started developing the technology and decided I was going to start a shoe company. And actually, in fifth grade, I wanted to start a shoe company. I actually, in earnest, decided to chase the dream in 2000, the end of 05, 2006, really. Developed the technology, filed it for a provisional patent, started working my network, building a network into the footwear industry. I had no experience in footwear prior to that, and decided to pursue KURU. So before that, worked at a startup. So straight out of college, I worked at in college, I got the job working for the startup and then continued to work for them after for a short period. It was a carbon fiber technology that ran out of cash. So they laid everyone off. We were trying to commercialize a technology that was really difficult to manufacture. And so I worked for them, learned a lot about what not to do when starting a company. It was a great learning experience. It was a really promising technology, just couldn't make it happen. Before that, went to BYU, got a degree in business, finance, and actually a minor in English. So,
oh, great!
It's funny.
That's a good mix of degrees. Actually, I really like that.
Yeah. I disliked English a lot throughout my high school career, and I swore I'd never take any more English courses than I absolutely needed to. And then when I got to college and took English 101 and learned, English is about persuasion and tools of writing and tools of persuasion. I'm like, whoa, this is kind of interesting. I like this stuff. So understanding the power of language and communication, obviously very, very powerful thing to have in a business environment.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I can go back to my childhood. You want to go back that far?
Yeah, of course, man. I want to go all the way back.
Okay.
This is going to be like the best free therapy session you've ever received.
I love it. So let's see. So I was born to an immigrant mother and a father who grew up in a small town in Idaho called Soda Springs.
Oh, Soda
think
Springs. I've been to Soda Springs. That's a great spot.
have you?
Oh, of
Yeah,
course.
you've probably been to, is it Lava Hot Springs just north of Soda, right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, so that bustling metropolis of Soda Springs that I don't think the population has grown much since my dad was there. So my mom's actually an immigrant from Italy, and so I was born to them, and then growing up, we actually lived all around. We bounced around, lived in Indiana, lived over in Europe, in Italy, lived in Taiwan. Actually went back to Indiana, and then graduated high school in Texas. So kind of lived all over the place.
So
And
you said you were thinking about building or creating or starting a shoe company all the way back in like 2005, I think you said. Why? What was that? Why shoes?
Well, yeah. So actually, it was in fifth grade that I wanted to start a shoe company, and then 2005 is when I decided to actually pursue the dream, the childhood dream. So when I was a kid in fifth grade, I don't know, I just got fascinated with footwear, and I think I can remember one friend in one of my classes saying, "I got these shoes called Nike Air, and they
Right.
make me run faster, they make me jump higher, they make me like I can shoot better, like." And I was like, wait, what? Like shoes can help you do that? And you go, oh yeah, like I'm a better athlete type thing. And so the concept of you can put something on your body that changes the way your body works, I think just fascinated me. I think I have a little bit of an engineering mind or interest, tinkering and solving problems. I used to build remote control cars and airplanes that I would fly, remote control airplanes that I would fly, and build forts and all. I was always kind of tinkering and trying to figure out how to assemble things and build things. And so I think that just really fascinated me. Wait, we can engineer something that goes on the human body that can actually change the way the body performs or enhance the way the body performs. So I used to sketch shoes, and fortunately my mom has all my original sketches and drawings and catalogs and everything. So and it's funny, in that pile of what the keepsakes, I have a page where it had all these companies that I wanted to start, and next to the shoe one I put number one goal. And I don't remember when I did that. I think that might have been junior high, maybe high school, when I wrote that sheet. So yeah, so I went to college and was not planning on being an entrepreneur. I was like, well, now I'm a grown up, so I have to do grown up things, and starting companies is what kids do, because that's what I wanted to do as a kid. That was my point of reference. My dad was in business, he was a businessman himself, but worked for the same company his whole career. And so I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do, because that's what I knew. And as I learned more about entrepreneurship, and I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool and fun and exciting. I'm actually in a lot of ways very risk averse. I'm not a big fan of risk. And in hindsight, I realized, well, I'm not a big fan of uncalculated risk. But at the time, I'm like, I want a job. I want stability. I want financial stability. I want to, I don't want all this ups and downs, because growing up, what I equated entrepreneurship was a lot of small business owners where one year it's up, the next year it's down, 1 year it's up, next year it's down, and they might have to shut down. And that scared me. I didn't want that kind of, up and down in my career and in income. And then I was like, wait a minute, Bill Gates, he's an entrepreneur. Oh, Steve Jobs, they're financially okay. So maybe you can achieve financial stability and be an entrepreneur. So that's what kind of shifted my gears. And like I said, I ended up going out of college working for a startup, because I was like, I have no clue how to start a company. To me, it was just, even in hindsight now, of course, with experience, you learn it's not that difficult to go create an entity. Even that intimidated me coming out of college. I'm like, what? How do you even you got to have lawyers? You got to do this and that. And no, you just go to the state of Utah's website and spend $35 and register, and boom, you're in business.
Hey, did you study Phil Knight?
Study, no. I read the book Shoe Dogs. Great book.
Yeah, Shoe Dog is awesome. But so were you fascinated by Nike? Because that's obviously that's one of the greatest brands ever created, right? And probably the biggest shoe company. And so they're like a competitor of yours now, which is fascinating. But did you look at them? You said, you mentioned hey, growing up, other kids were wearing Nikes and saying they could play better basketball and that type of stuff. What have you learned from looking at that company and the way they've run it?
Yeah, Nike's definitely admirable in what they've accomplished, and Phil Knight obviously is an incredible visionary that has pulled off, and I mean, he's completely transformed what we expected out of our footwear, right? He and Nike, of course. Before Nike, footwear just wasn't as compelling. It's definitely still a fashion item for sure. It just wasn't as compelling from a brand and what we thought was possible. So yeah, I think Nike is for sure. They're a marketing machine. They make great product as well, but they know how to sell that product in a way that makes it so desirable. Little admission, I kind of hated Nike because I was going to go kick their butts. I was going to go beat them. That's a great vision to have. I don't think it's going to happen. But Nike's a pretty impressive brand. I guess what would I say I've learned? It's funny, reading the book Shoe Dogs. Actually, one of my employees, she started reading it before I did, and she's like, "Hey, have you heard of the book? Have you read it?" And I'm like, "No, not yet." Have you? And she's like, "Oh, I'm reading it." She's like, "Bret, this is everything we've been dealing with." I'm like, "Really?" So I'm like, "Well, I got to read this thing." And as I was reading, I was like, "Oh my gosh, we have a similar story. Oh, that happened to us too." And so it was really interesting as I learned his story and read about it and realizing, man, we faced a lot of these same issues with factories substituting materials, simply not making. We had a factory that ran off, just literally the owner just disappeared. I had met with him and he said, give me 30 or 40 grand deposit and I promise you I'll make you your next order. And my intuition just said, no, don't do it. Just don't do it. It just didn't feel right. And 2 months later, he literally just disappeared and his employees showed up and everything had been locked. And to this day, we've never heard from him since. And, so we've had some crazy stories. We had stories where factories substituted materials out and we had to recall, or not recall, but we had to quit selling the shoes. And we went ahead and basically gave every single customer a credit towards another pair, so we've definitely had some similar hiccups in our journey as well. So, I would say one of the things is just perseverance and find your voice and find out who your core customer is. And I think that's where Nike, they persevered, man, for decades. And, they finally stumbled into this technology called Nike Air, which was visual, which completely transformed things. And then you add Jordan and the Jordan brand on top of that. And it took them to the stratosphere. So it took them time though. They were patient. They didn't have this, there's definitely an urgency to compete and win. And they had to discover their way. So I think that's one thing that I admire a lot is the grit and the perseverance of Will.
Who is KURU's customer? Who are you tackling? Who are you marketing toward?
Yeah, so it's funny, we stumbled into this. So of course I had a business plan and I, pitched to investors when I launched KURU. And if I had executed on my business plan, we'd be dead today. The business plan and the brand I wanted to build is very different than who we are today. So we actually stumbled into our customer. I invented a technology that I patented, and it's shaped like the heel, so it's very rounded. Most shoes are flat. The midsole would be flat, and our technology is cupped, and so it's actually designed to cup and flex inward with every step. And so as you walk, and it just flexes inward, and it cups that fat pad. Well, come to find out, that's actually really, really good for people with foot problems. If they have all kinds of plantar fasciitis, heel pain, these kinds of things. And what's the other fascinating thing is that doesn't just afflict out of shape people, or, you can be young, you can be old. Of course, as we age, that fat pad gets smashed and flattened in the heel. And so that causes more problems. So that's, nature's cushioning starting to fail us as we age. However, even as athletes, that can be hard on that same fat pad. There's a lot of different activities. So, in shape, not in shape, old, young, gender, it doesn't matter. We're all at risk of foot pain. And so if you have foot pain, there's a pretty good chance that there's a KURU that can help you with that and put your body in a position to heal itself. And in addition to that, the reason it's able to do that is this patented technology that keeps that natural cushioning healthier under the foot and actually amplifies why nature put it there in the first place.
Yeah, that's interesting. You said something interesting there that I want to double click on, and that was you came up with a business plan. Had you followed the business plan, the business wanted to survive from it. It made me think you went to business, you studied business in college. Is that useful for those who were thinking about what they want to do in college, all that type of stuff? Is going to business school or getting an MBA or all these questions, these debates rage all the time in our world, but what do you think?
Yes, I think education is always valuable. Do you have to pay top dollar at a top school to get a good education? No, I don't think you do. There's absolutely advantages to, going to a structured program like a business school or university or things like that. I'm a big fan of education. I'm a big fan of the discipline that education brings. And if someone's able to exercise that self-discipline without having a teacher and, finals and all this structure to force them to learn, then go knock yourself out and do it. Education, I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly reading. I've probably read, 10 books this year, 15 books this year already or more. So constantly reading, constantly learning, because there's no end to knowledge. Having said that, when I've talked to people, if they want to be an entrepreneur, typically I say, you know what, like for me, my perspective, like accounting or finance, study that. Because if you have that understanding, accounting is the language of business. You can learn a lot about marketing. You can learn a lot about supply chain. You can learn a lot about operations outside of school. I've I've not met too many people who taught themselves accounting out of school, outside of school or a structured class. It's just, I don't know. Sorry to all the accountants that are listening to this, but for the rest of us that don't think like accountants, it's kind of tough to teach ourselves accounting outside of school.
Yeah, that's a good
So that's
point.
that's typically been my advice is, you know, take enough finance or accounting classes in school if you're going to go to college to learn enough, because that's so powerful in understanding what's working for the business and what's not.
By the way, Kuru is doing phenomenally well. At what point did you realize we have something here? I mean, you have the patent, you'd figured out that stuff. At what point did you realize we've got something?
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're that's what the rumblings are that and we are actually. It's been great for us.
No, you're people
So
don't understand. Like you're building something really interesting here. Like the only thing I can compare it to is like Allbirds. When Allbirds like a few years ago, I don't think people realized how big Allbirds was going to get because of what and we've had Joe and those types of people on the show and stuff. But I think what you've got here is really incredible. Well, at what point did you know that was true?
so let's see. Well, I can go back to the sad story when we launched into the end of '08. Lehman Brothers had just gone bankrupt. I was
Yeah.
in China actually at our factory partner at the time, um, overseeing the production. And I called home. Actually, my dad, so he was helping me. He had retired, and he's like, "Oh, he's an accountant actually." So he's like, "Oh, I'll help you do your books." And so I was like, "Hey, Dad, how are things going?" He's like, "Lehman Brothers just went bankrupt," and I was like, "Okay, what does that mean?" He goes, "Well, the financial markets are completely like melting." Okay, what does that mean? He's like, "You know what? Don't worry about it. Just get the shoes made." Probably a good thing. I was too young to understand and appreciate what was really happening. So we launched right after Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, and it was a terrible time to launch a brand, a shoe brand. So come 2009, we had to pivot. And actually, in '08, we were actually selling through stores and we had an online presence, e-com presence, but it wasn't really our focus. It was mainly brick and mortar. Well, we pivoted in 2009 because brick and mortar just got pummeled from the economic recession. And so we went direct to consumer. And I was like, I don't know if it's going to work, but we're just going to start selling and see what happens. All the cash was tied up in inventory. I had raised less than half of my target raise in financing. And I had spent all of that financing in tooling up for mass production and buying inventory. And so I was like, well, who am I going to market to? Because I can't market to just hikers or runners or whatever, because I'm up against the Nikes of the world and the Merrills. And so it's like, what am I going to do? And sure enough, customers started calling saying, "Hey, I bought your shoes at such and such general sporting goods or whatever the store was, and you've completely changed my life." Well, how do we do that? And oh, like I couldn't. I used to walk my dog every morning, and I couldn't for the last 2 years. I bought your shoes, and now I'm walking every day.
Hmm.
Really? Well, why is that? Like, well, I had this foot problem. What foot problem do you have? Oh, I had plantar fasciitis. What's plantar fasciitis? Or and so I started hearing customers calling in, and they were actually calling to place another order. And they were like, I went back to the store and they were sold out, or they didn't have a very good selection. It's like, surely this brand has more than what this store is selling. And you do. So can I place an order? And so that's when we pivoted and said, hey, I think this helps people with their foot problems. And so we created a landing page, started spending money on online advertising, and it just took off. It absolutely just took off. And, I was like, I don't know if it's going to work. Let's see if it helps. I mean, customers are telling me it's helping. And there were some doctors that I talked to, some podiatrists, and said, hey, customers are telling me this. Like, does that make sense? Like, why would they be saying that? And the podiatrist were like, oh, yeah, well, your technology does this and it's shaped this way and it's designed to do these things. Like, so that would make sense that they would experience this level of benefit. I'm like, really? And I didn't know that. I just knew what's biomechanically correct and what's the science say, and how do we marry those together in making a better shoe? And in doing that, we invented this technology. So I took good principles, but I had no clue it was going to solve plantar fasciitis or foot pain or whatever, like customers are telling us. And so we started marketing to that, and it completely launched us. And so we got a lot of traction early on with that and have grown organically, basically bootstrapped ever since.
How did you figure out the supply chain stuff? And how did I think a lot of people would be interested in how you worked with China, how you even figured out that whole process. How did you figure that out?
Yeah, and this was so Skype had recently launched when I launched KURU. So I mean, I'm not sure how many of us have been using Skype, especially during the pandemic. I think it's all Zoom and Google Meets or whatever. So back then, Skype was just getting, kind of getting traction. And so there was a lot of Skyping. I'll tell you what, though, I had no clue how to make a shoe when I launched KURU. I had no experience in the shoe business. I never even worked in a shoe store. No clue what I was doing. So I started networking, started asking a lot of questions, found a local design agency here in Utah who designed the product. And then I said, well, who can I talk to? And they knew some people in the shoe business, and they told me about this shoe trade show up in Portland. So I started attending that. And then there I would walk around and, who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? I want to start a shoe company. They're like, are you sure? Like, you really shouldn't go in this business, Brett. Like, this is a terrible business to start a company in. And all. I'm like, no, I'm starting a shoe company. I've been wanting to do this since fifth grade. I'm going to do it. And they're okay, then we'll go talk to this person, or I'll introduce you to this guy or that gal or whatever. And so I made some connections over in Asia in anticipation of traveling over there. And then I said, well, I'm going to come over and I'm going to spend, that first trip was probably 3 or 4 weeks. And I just did the rounds and just figured it out. I like to travel, and it was a huge adventure. I can't read Chinese. I can't speak Chinese. Even though we lived in Taiwan for a year growing up, I forgot it all. Whatever I learned for that year as an 8-year-old, I forgot completely, other than xie xie, which is thank you, and ni hao ma, which is how are you doing? So I completely forgot everything. And I was like, well, I'll go figure it out. And so I just started traveling around China and, making contacts and asking questions and visiting factories. And it was not easy. It was a ton of networking and a ton of perseverance and not giving up. Because I kid you not, there were so many people in the shoe business that I would go to these shoe trade shows where the brands were too, and I'd meet some of the owners of smaller brands, and they're like, "Dude, you're crazy, man! Like you don't have any money, you don't have any financing, you've never been in this industry before. Like, good luck, man!" Like they're kind of like, "Oh, nice kid here wants to start a shoe company. Wish you luck." Like that'll never happen. And so when I admire the perseverance in Nike, and that's really what's made KURU successful, is just the grit and perseverance and not giving up and just asking over and over again. I had an internship back in college, actually, selling life insurance of all things. And it was an excellent program. It actually taught me a ton. And one of the things that I use to this day that I learned in that internship was how to ask for referrals and how to ask for introductions to other people that I don't know yet. And learning that skill has been so invaluable, because I'll talk to someone like, hey, this has been great. Thanks for your input. Hey, who else should I talk to that might be able to help me? It's a simple process. Yeah. And I was never taught that until I took that internship. And it was so powerful because people want to help, right? At the end of the end, I have people reach out to me, and I love to help and make introductions and help them chase their dream. I also would say, hey, look, all the advice I give you is worth what you paid for it. And if I listened to all the advice that I was given, I would have never started this thing. So I'm going to tell you my honest perspective, and you may want to ignore it and just go do it anyways.
Well, once you figured out the supply chain stuff and working with that and getting that all sorted out, and I'm sure you still have, things that you deal with, but you figured it out at this point. How do you think about marketing? How do you think about branding? How do you think, because that's a huge part of the world that you're in.
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, we are a brand, and I actually, whenever I talk to anyone, I say, I don't care what industry or business or service you're providing, you are a brand, and you can build an incredibly strong brand, or you can just ignore it and let it just organically do whatever it's going to do. At the end of the day, we're all building brands, and brands matter to people because that's what they rely on. That's who they trust. as individuals, we connect with people who share similar values, who we feel we can trust and believe in. And so that is obviously an important part of what we are doing at KURU, and delivering on that brand promise is critical. And we're not perfect at it. We make mistakes. We fall short. Our product doesn't work for everyone. We wish it did. Unfortunately, or I guess I shouldn't say unfortunately. Fortunately, we have incredible customer stories that our customers tell us and share and write, and that sets an expectation for new customers. And they say, well, geez, if it happened, look, everyone's having success and everyone's having these results, I expect the same. And so we really try to do a lot to manage the expectations, to say like, hey, this is powerful. Our shoes are doing tremendous things for hundreds of thousands of people, and we hope it does the same for you. And so we're really generous with how we do our returns policy and things like this, because we recognize we're not going to nail it 100% for every customer. The other thing is we've done a lot of investment in the customer experience side of things. We've got an incredible KURU gurus is what they're called. And our KURU gurus, their job is to become expert not only in KURU's products, but in how to help the customer. And we've invested a lot there. We've got some great leaders there that are doing a tremendous job at really transforming our customers' experience and really connecting with them and helping them understand what they need, what's going to work for them. And then on the marketing front, it's interesting. We kind of joke sometimes we're the anti-D2C, D2C shoe company. And the reason we say that is because the way we're scaling is a little bit different than kind of your traditional D2C consumer brand. Mm-hmm. They're very heavy on social media. They're very heavy on Instagram and some of these things, and it's very lifestyle focused. And we're there too. Don't get me wrong. Social media is a big part of our business and acquisition strategy. And we've also discovered that because our customer has a very real need, we want to get in front of them that way too. So any channel that helps us get in front of them for a real need that they have, they're not seeking a lifestyle, they're seeking a problem that needs solved. And most of them have tried 2 or 3 or 10 other solutions. And so for us, marketing and brand is really focused in those 2 areas. And how do we really get in front of the right customer who already understands they've got a need and maybe has tried 2 or 10 or whatever solutions that have not delivered on the promise? And then how do we manage the expectation to make sure that we deliver on the promise that we're putting out there? And so that's been a tricky, it's a tightrope, because you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. Right. And then you don't want to underdeliver because then they don't have the confidence to even give you a shot in the first place. So it's been a really interesting tightrope to walk as we've continued to grow and understand our customer better.
So what do you do there? Do you go to like orthopedic offices and say, try this shoe, maybe it'd be good to recommend to your patient? Like how do you go deeper on that? How do you do that?
Yeah, so we've never actually gone in that channel. It's a huge opportunity. What's interesting is there's been a lot of word of mouth that actually has created a lot of success for KURU. So it's kind of like when you take care of one customer, they'll refer their friends, and then they'll refer their friends, and then they'll refer their friends. And what's happened is then they go to their doctor and say, I've been on I was customer service actually. I was overflow for customer service up through like 2015, 2016 at KURU. So even as recently as that, if all of our gurus were busy on the phones, my phone started to ring and I would take care of the customer if I was available. And I've had customers say, I'm going to go chew out my doctor. He or she should have known about you guys because I've tried so many things and they didn't tell me about this. I discovered you without them. They should know better type thing. And they're just super frustrated. So if we can create that kind of an experience for our customers where they go and they chew out their doctor and say, why didn't you tell me about this brand? Like this brand has solved my problem and you've done injections or this or that, or sent me to physical therapy. And the only thing that worked was the shoe brand. Like you need to know about this and tell all your other patients. And that actually has been a big part of our growth and we hear it all the time now. Customers say, oh my gosh, my doctor, so-and-so, who we've never talked to, said, you need to go buy this shoe. In fact, the other day, we have a showroom here in Salt Lake. And I was talking to the customer and I was like, hey, curious, how did you hear about it? He goes, oh, my doctor told me. And the doctor had recommended one brand of shoes that wasn't working for him. And he goes, oh, you know what? Maybe you should go try this brand KURU. And so the guy was like, I'm here to try them because this other brand just is not working for me. And I still got my issues. And this guy was an athlete. I mean, a hardcore athlete. He used to race biking all the time. And actually he had a wide foot, and it was his narrow cycling shoes that caused problems. So that's really, it really is a focus on really taking care of the customer. And we've really tried to architect a really powerful customer journey that anticipates the needs of our customer. And we want to be one step ahead of the customer at all times, knowing what their next need is going to be and then delivering on it. And so like, whoa, how did you even know that was my next need? And we continue to refine and improve that over time. And we've come light years ahead of where we were when I was still answering the phones. And so that's actually been a big part of the focus, is just how do we really take care of, how are we always one step ahead of that customer? And the way I say it is, imagine, we want to know where the customers, where they're at in their journey. And we want to show up and kind of walk right alongside them as they're walking, say, oh my gosh, my feet are starting to hurt. And like, whoa, KURU, wait, how did you find me? Like, how did you know I was, what's going on here? And it's like, yeah, we're KURU. I've never even heard of you. Like, that's kind of creepy. Like we've all heard about the creepy spying through online marketing. And so how do we engineer that in a way that it's not so creepy and it completely aligns with where they're at on their journey? And if we can do that, the ROI is much higher. The ROAS gets better. The experience gets better because they say, whoa, KURU, how did you know that I needed you and you were here right when I needed you? And then, of course, that builds all kinds of trust and confidence that KURU really cares.
How do you think about other verticals? Because so many other, like Nike is a good example, Adidas, all these kind of major legacy shoe brands eventually go into other verticals like hoodies, other product lines, that type of thing. How do you think about that?
Yeah, so we definitely have some product. We have, shoe care accessories. That was actually a big request from customers. How do I keep my KURUs in tip-top shape? So we offer that. We have some socks, and then we have some branded t-shirts. Our focus largely is around foot pain and what can help solve foot pain. There's definitely opportunities to expand. We've chosen to stay focused at this point. We just feel like there's so much that we can still do for our customer in the footwear space, new styles, new categories, so really our vertical is not so much expanding beyond footwear, although we dabble in a few other kind of product types. Our focus really is there's so much we can still do for our customer to help solve their foot pain within footwear. Let's just get better at that over and over again and more and more. So we continue to reinvest in the footwear product and expanding the offering in the areas that can best help our customers. And our belief is if we can take care of that foundation for them, the rest of their body can do what it needs to. And in so doing, we really help them give their life back, and they can start pursuing their life's passion and potential and purpose. And the more we can build footwear that does that, the more we can help them pursue their passions and purpose.
Finally, I wonder if you could leave us with the best leadership advice you've received, or the best leadership advice you would want to impart to those who are listening or watching right now.
I like that question. Leadership advice. So am I talking to the leaders that are listening, or those who maybe even aspire to become leaders?
That's exactly right.
I believe. What's that?
That's right. Yeah. Like those who watch this are like they want to be entrepreneurs, they want to be CEOs, they want to be leaders. They have the wide gamut, and I think your wisdom here would be super valuable.
Yeah. So I believe leadership is learned or can be learned, and definitely developed. Sure, some people just are natural born leaders. I wasn't one of them. I feel like I've had to learn a lot of what leadership looks like. I do feel like I have natural skills and strengths that help me as a leader. And what I've learned is most people, as they learn the leadership skills, they have their own set of strengths. There is no one leader. For a long time, imposter syndrome, that's talked about a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think just embracing, and I've talked to people who've been promoted into roles that they don't feel confident in. They're like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, and you probably don't. You're probably right. You probably actually don't know what you're doing. But guess what? You're in that seat. That is the job that you accepted and took. So you can figure it out and you can work on it, or you can say, not for me. I don't know what I'm doing. Let me go, let me demote me or whatever. And that's what it is at every level, especially if you're an entrepreneur. Guess what? You don't know what you're doing. That's the nature of entrepreneurship. You're blazing a new frontier. If you knew what you were doing, you just copy the Nikes of the world or whatever else, guess what? I don't want to invest in your business. I'm not interested in, if someone came and said, oh, we're going to knock off Amazon and beat them at their own game. And, oh, and you know what? When we get big enough, we're going to start leasing out our servers to other people in the cloud. You're like, what are you talking about? Like, that's been done for 20 years now, So Jeff Bezos didn't know what he was doing. He had a vision, he had a team, and together they tried to figure it out and they stumbled. And I guarantee they've made billion-dollar mistakes in that company. And we've made $1 million mistakes in our company. So I think let's just embrace and accept that we don't know what we're doing. And we read and we see in the TVs and everything, wow, man, that entrepreneur knows what they're doing. And no, they don't. They might have different experience than you, and it might serve them better in that area or whatever. At the end of the day, every single entrepreneur worked their tail off. They did a ton of networking, a ton of reading, a ton of talking, a ton of collaborating with their team and team building, and a ton of experimentation. That's what made them successful. It wasn't like they know what they're doing from the get-go. And so I think that's a really important thing to think about as a leader is the difference is when you're the leader, you may feel like you don't know what you're doing, or you may feel like you don't have the answer. As a leader, you're being asked to make the decision. And that's what the important thing is. Embrace that that's your role. And you need to be able to embrace the decision in light of uncertainty. Can you do that? And so how do you develop the skills to get enough information, to get enough insight, and then in light of all of the uncertainty and all of the information you don't have, confidently make a decision and tell your team, and that we're going to go march, we're going to go take that hill. And I don't know, and I've at times said, this may be the wrong decision. This may end up not taking us in the direction we want to go. However, I feel like this is the right decision. And there's a lot of times I say, well, someone's got to make a decision. I'm the most senior person in the room, so I'm going to go ahead and make a decision. And and I'll invite, hey, does anyone feel like this might risk whatever? And it's okay, thanks. We're going to go that path anyways. And so leadership really is about, in light of uncertainty, trying to get reasonable on information. It's not just like wet finger in the air. Be smart about things. Engage your team, challenge them, have them challenge you, and then making a decision and embracing that. Yeah, you may not know what you're doing, and stay true to your core. Follow that intuition, and align it with your vision, whatever that vision is, and make sure that the decisions you're making are moving, are respecting the vision that you have and the direction that you want your company to go. And if you do that, you'll weave back and forth, right? It's not going to be a straight path of success after success. You'll bounce back and forth. It's like bumper bowling, right? You don't want to go into the gutter. So by having that vision, long-term vision in mind, and embracing that, that ball is going to probably hit the bumpers a few times before it gets to the pins. One thing I say to myself is, I don't have to make every basket. I just need to win the game. And so picking your battles is an important thing, right? Like, is this a basket I need to drain? No, I can let that bounce off the rim and into the out of bounds. It's fine. Yeah. There's other shots. I better make that shot, because if I don't make that shot, I might compromise my ability to win the game. And so and once again, that's the vision. Winning the game is the vision, right? That's down the path. That's in the future. And so as you make decisions as a leader, how do you make decisions that are going to help you win the game? And not all baskets win games. Not all shots, not all attempts at shots win the game. But there's some shots you better drain that baby, or you may not win that game.
Yeah, that makes sense. Bret, thank you so much for coming on. So impressed with what you build at KURU, who you are as a leader, as a person. We'll have you back, I'm sure. But Bret Rasmussen, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks a bunch, Clint, and happy to be part of this and to share my story. Thanks for the chance.